All right, fam. Sorry I'm late. My computer forced me into a update restart. So that's what happened. So I'm just gonna kind of chill, wait for some people to come in, and then we'll jump into it. But in the meantime, tonight we're just gonna take it slow. No hurry, no rush. Go over these cases and oh, I got something going on here. Yeah. Um, so tonight we're just gonna take it slow, go over the cases. Um, for Ariel sellers, I found two interesting articles, opinion articles, uh, really more or less concerning how the state is handling the law that they were trying to enact and um, accountability as far as the state goes. We've got Cairo Jordan. If you remember, he was the little boy found in Indiana in the Las Vegas suitcase, and there's updates in his case. We have a conviction, and we're going to go into that article because some of it is kind of, it makes me question what really happened with him, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to that article. And also, we're going to go over Cody Bigsby's case. Um, I know a lot of creators have already covered the confession letters and this, that, and the other thing, but I haven't. So I'm going to cover it so that I can put my little 2 cents in. I'm also going to do this as an open panel tonight. If anyone wants to hop up and um, put their 2 cents in, you are welcome to. Let me get over here and pin that comment. And I was going to do a camera on live, but for some reason my camera is only showing a black screen. Not sure what's up with that. So camera is off for the night. I'll be working on that over the next couple of days and see if I can get that working, get it up and running so we can do some face to face. The join link is posted at the top of the comments. It's pinned. I think the order I want to do this in is Ariel, then Codi, then Cairo. And again, tonight is a no hurry, no rush. We're just going to hang out, take our time, chit chat, catch up. And I got some great news today. So I am feeling absolutely wonderful. Whether you believe in God or vibes or energy. There's always good things in store for good people. And God or the universe or wherever you put your faith is always looking to help good people. Yep, I can vouch for that. So let me get my screen share up and ready to go. I'm gonna take it out for right now until we get some people in. I know you guys are out there. There's 614 of you. So I know at least two or three of you will show up. And yes, I am definitely back for good this time. So I'll be on more often, more times a week, and we're just gonna jump back into it. I was gonna do the whole human trafficking thing, and the article when I first um read it, I was like, yeah, this is a good article. But then when I was presenting it, it's like it's a good article, but it's really not good for presentation on this platform. So I did link on my community wall if you want to go and read the article for yourself. And there's also going to be a part two to that article coming out. I also found another resource when I was looking for that Polaris hotspot map for human trafficking. I found the actual Polaris website, which has a lot of good information about um, human trafficking and the statistics, the myths, and the realities. And I'm going to make sure I post that on my community wall tomorrow so that you guys can go and check that website out if you want to. Just have a good look at it because one of the things that I was reading on the Polaris website was saying how um, human trafficking is not necessarily sex trafficking, and that in the bigger picture, sex trafficking is actually a very small part of human trafficking. Most of it concerns labor and work. It's just that in the United States, we hear more about sex trafficking and we're more aware of that. We're not quite so aware of the labor trafficking side of it, forced labor. And it goes into the global view of it and how essentially human trafficking equals slavery. And around the globe, it's more labor trafficking than sex trafficking. There were some other really good, interesting things that I read on the website. So I will make sure to post that on the community wall. That's going to be a post for tomorrow so that you can check that out and just like go over it, read it, learn, educate yourself. Um, yeah, there are some surprising facts on there. Welcome to the chat, whoever that is. Tonight we're going to be covering Ariel Sellers, Codi Bigsby, and Cairo Jordan. If you don't remember who Cairo Jordan is, he is the little boy who was found in Indiana in the Las Vegas suitcase. And there are some interesting updates in his case. All right, we're at 10 minutes of me blabbering on, so let's get started. The first article about Ariel that I want to share, let me make this bigger. Okay, is it bigger this way? Okay, that's good. This is the best way. Okay, so this article is an opinion piece, a commentary by John Hill, and we're just going to jump right into it. John Hill says Hawaii should come clean about its actions in a notorious child abuse case. Almost nothing is known about the actions of the public officials who handed over Ariel Sellers to the Waimanalo couple accused of killing her. Will anyone ever answer for Ariel Sellers' death? I'm not talking about her adoptive parents, Isaac and Lehua Kalua. They are accused of killing the 6-year-old girl they renamed Isabella in a dog cage with her mouth duct taped so she could not roam the house at night seeking food they failed to provide. A trial early next year will decide the Waimanalo couple's fate. No, I'm talking instead about the public servants and government contractors who took part in handing her over to the Kaluas. To be clear, I'm not equating the actions of public officials with the horrible crimes that led to arguably the most notorious child abuse case in recent Hawaii history. But there are professionals with great responsibilities, and when something goes very wrong, as it did here, they should be held accountable. Let me make this bigger for myself over here. It's easy, but not always fair, to second guess child welfare officials. Social workers cannot be expected to always know which of the many parents and foster caregivers they oversee are going to do something horrible. Sometimes no one outside the family has any reason to suspect that things are happening behind closed doors. This was not such a case. The Kaluas had criminal records that would have been enough for the Department of Human Services to reject them as foster parents, much less adoptive parents. They were in financial straits that also could have disqualified them. And a lawsuit now alleges that there were several reports to the state and others that the Kaluas were abusing Ariel for more than a year before she disappeared. They are, of course, just allegations, but the lawsuit gives very specific details, including dates, places, and people. And Ariel's biological mother, Melanie Joseph, told Civil Beat she also warned state social workers about her fears that Ariel was being abused. The poor girl is dead after unimaginable suffering. But what do we know about the actions of the various state social workers, contractors, and court officials? Almost nothing. Who was the judge? What about the family court judge who approved the adoption? Under Hawaii law, adoptive parents must be, quote, fit and proper persons and financially able to give the individual a proper home and education, unquote. A judge must make sure this standard is met. In addition to his criminal record of felony assault and terroristic threats, Isaac Kalua filed for bankruptcy in July 2020, several months before Ariel's adoption. He listed $130,893 in debt beyond what he owed on his house, mostly from credit cards and lines of credit. I asked the state judiciary the name of the judge. The answer: everything about adoption proceedings is private, even the name of the judge. Hey, Sleuthy. Once an adoption is granted, all records are placed under seal. A spokesman for the judiciary wrote in an email. In light of those statutory In light of these statutory mandates, the judiciary is prohibited from disclosing the names of judges who granted adoption petitions because this would indirectly be disclosing confidential information. But how does this apply to Ariel Sellers' case? It's been reported publicly scores of times that she has been adopted by the Kaluas. It is no longer confidential. Judges don't have lifetime tenure. They petitioned the Hawaii Judicial Selection Commission to approve them for new 6-year terms. The commission would the commission should think long and hard about granting another term to the judge who approved Ariel's adoption, or at least ask some tough questions. The public needs to know the identity of that judge so people have a chance to comment. Okay, here we go. Get rid of that. What about the social workers and their supervisors at DHS and the contractors who advise them about whether a placement is safe, including Catholic Charities, which is named in the lawsuit? Hey, BC, I asked DHS whether it or any other entity had conducted a review of what went wrong in Ariel's case, and if so, if I could see it. I also asked for an interview with Kathy Betts, DHS director since 2020, and before that, deputy director. No response on the Betts interview. As for the review, quote, DHS has done an internal review of the confidential records of this case. The records are not able to be disclosed because they are prohibited from disclosure by law. Hi, Jordan. Welcome to the chat. I don't think I've seen you here before. Welcome to the channel. It's true that federal law requires state child welfare agencies to keep records confidential, including abuse reports, to protect the rights of children and their parents and guardians. But there are exceptions. One federal provision calls for the states to allow public disclosure of, quote, the findings or information about the case of a child abused or neglected which has resulted in a child fatality or near fatality, unquote. Early this year, I asked DHS for findings and information in child abuse deaths and near deaths for the past several years. The department did provide some very bare bones information about several cases, but not Ariel's. The reason? Though the girl had been missing for more than a year, she had not been officially declared dead. The judge made that declaration in July. So I once again asked DHS for its findings and information. The department said it was waiting for the court to send a written order or death certificate. This month I asked again, no response. Apparently the department is still waiting and feels no need to contact the court itself. Maybe the court will never send anything and DHS will use that as an excuse to never provide information. DHS also failed to respond to my request about whether any disciplinary action had been taken as a result of its review. Taking a step back, the confidentiality provisions are meant to protect the privacy rights of children and their parents or guardians. Tragically, Ariel's privacy rights are now moot. The Kaluas stand accused of killing her. Their public trial would seem to pretty much demolish any expectations they had of privacy. Another exception to the privacy provisions in federal law. The states are required to disclose information to a government entity or its agent that have, quote, a need for such information in order to carry out its responsibilities under law to protect children from abuse and neglect, unquote. So it would seem that the legislature, as the overseer of DHS, could demand to see the records. I asked Representative Lisa Martin, who represents the district that includes Waimanalo, where Ariel lived her short life, why the legislature doesn't use its oversight powers to demand answers. My role is not revenge, she said. Martin does not want to be seen as attacking DHS because she hopes to have a productive dialogue with child welfare officials to make improvements to the system. I want to appreciate what they do instead of attacking them, she said. I have so many things I want to say right now. She pointed out that State Auditor Les Condo is due to complete an audit of DHS sometime soon, and that the legislature has beefed up child welfare budgets, including money for state contractors to visit foster homes more regularly. A new working group will also review DHS, though its recommendations are in no way binding. But none of this directly addresses what happened to Ariel's case. As for that, Martin said, the civil suit will force DHS to explain itself. I appreciate Martin's efforts and her willingness to at least talk to me, unlike this. But I disagree that seeking accountability from officials amounts to revenge. I also know that many civil suits settle out of court before the facts come out. In fact, that is often why they settle out of court. So I would not rely on that venue for reckoning. A California case offers an alternative. I wondered what kind of public accountability took place in the aftermath of notorious child abuse cases in other states. And so simply Googled something like worst child abuse cases. At the top of the results was a case of the Turpin children in Riverside County, California. The 13 children, aged 2 to 29, had been abused for years, chained to their beds, given inadequate food, left living in filthy conditions. The parents are serving terms of 25 years to life in state prison. Some of the children were subsequently placed in a foster home where they were allegedly abused again. And the adult children reported that the county had been remiss in releasing money held for them to help them navigate their new lives. I'm sure we all remember that. It turns out there had been some earlier horrific cases of child abuse in Riverside County, and the response to those cases and the Turpin House of Horrors offers more contrast to Hawaii's response to Ariel's death. For one, in 2018, Riverside County's Director of Child Services Division resigned amid civil lawsuits over the county's failure to act in two cases of severe child abuse that resulted in more than $11 million in settlements. That same year, the county hired an outside expert to do a, quote, root cause analysis of what went wrong in the cases that led to the civil lawsuits and make reforms. In 2021, the County Board of Supervisors paid a law firm $868,000 to assess the county's care of the Turpin children and the overall child welfare system. The law firm assembled a team of experts from UC Berkeley, UCLA, and elsewhere. It analyzed 30,000 pages or records, and interviewed more than 100 people. It issued a 634-page report replete with recommendations for change. Much of the report pertaining to the Turpin children was redacted. They are all still alive and retain privacy rights. But at least the body that oversees the child welfare system got a detailed accounting. I don't know whether these efforts made a difference in the Riverside County, but they underscore a basic truth that Hawaii officials could embrace. Child welfare agencies and courts use our tax money to achieve the goal of protecting children. We have the right to know what they're doing or failing to do in our name. This article I really like because he hit several nails dead on the head. It's all about accountability. And it would seem that in Ariel's case, when it comes to trying to get accountability out of these people, trying to get at least some kind of answers, they put you into this vicious circle where they're saying, well, we're waiting for this, so we can't do that. And then when they get this, it's we're waiting for this, so we can't do that. And it just keeps going around and around and around. He pointed out that even a little research into the Kaluas could have prevented Ariel's death because they had financial difficulties, which is a disqualifier. They had criminal records, which is a disqualifier. I'm of the understanding that one of them had a brother living in the home who had a criminal record, which is a disqualifier. And if anyone had taken the time to do so much as a bin verified check on Isaac Kalua alone, Ariel and her sisters never would have been placed in that house. She never would have been put in a dog cage, duct taped, starved to death. And God only knows what they did with her body after the fact. She still hasn't been found. Her biological family wouldn't be grieving. If anyone had so much as listened to Melanie telling them repeatedly, Ariel's being abused. Ariel's being abused. Ariel is being abused. And now, even in her death, it's like nobody's listening. Nobody cares. Nobody's willing to answer for anything. Nobody's willing to say, hey, we messed up. We're going to try to do better. This is what we're going to do to try to do better by future children. The least they can do is that. The least they can do is an honest internal review and come up with a plan to prevent this from happening, if at all possible, in the future. And it's like he said, nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors except the family. You know, if how many people have we seen who have absolutely no criminal record? Look at Rex Heuermann, the Long Island serial killer. Dude was what, an accountant or something? He had a white collar job. He went to an office every day. And then at night, he was out murdering people. So we can't prevent every case of child abuse by doing background checks, but we could prevent a lot of them with simple due diligence. Simply listening and not dismissing someone when they say, hey, listen to me. Melanie was probably dismissed, and whatever she had to say, they didn't put any merit to it because, oh, she's just a drug addict. She lost her kid. So how can she say someone else is abusing the kid? You know, she was probably not really, they didn't put much stock in anything she said. They saw her a certain way, and so they dismissed her complaints instead of listening to her and investigating, because the evidence was right there on Ariel's body. We saw it in the pictures. We saw the bruises. We saw the chopped off hair. We saw her dragging her broken, ill-set leg behind her as they were going to court. We saw her go from a chubby-cheeked, beautiful little girl to skin and bones and a shadow of what she used to be. And Hawaii is apparently not holding anyone accountable for that. She's just another dead kid. It's crazy. I think that if you're going to be a social worker, you should at least have common sense and situational awareness. If you go, hey, in the bushes, if you go into someone's house and they have a dog cage in the bathroom, but they don't have a dog or a cat or a rabbit or anything else that will go in a cage, why do you have a cage? Ask that question and see how flustered they get. Do they stutter or stammer? Or are they trying to fish for an answer? Look for things that look odd, out of place. I guarantee you, almost any one of us could have walked into the Kalua's house and noticed some things that weren't right to the point where they needed a second look. And in my mind, I don't think that the social workers who were dealing with Ariel's case didn't notice things. I think they overlooked things. We know that Lehua was on some type of commission where she held a public seat. And so she may have had some pull. She may have had some friends in high places. Because otherwise, how did they even get hold of Ariel and her siblings? How did they ever get hold of any child through foster care or adoption? Between nothing else, the financial hardship and the felony record. Financial hardship and felony record. That's two red flags and disqualifiers right there. I think the fact that the judge, they can't even reveal the name of the judge in the adoption, doesn't really make sense to me, because revealing the name of the judge would not necessarily reveal anything else of a confidential nature involving the case. All we know is that he's the judge that provided over this particular adoption. It would give us an opportunity as the public and for people in the Waimanalo area to really take a look at this judge. What's his track record? You know, what's his judgment like? Let me go sit in his courtroom and observe him, if possible. Let me do a little research on where he stands. Before he became an adoption judge, was he on the bench? How did he handle cases then? Because you don't necessarily have to look at specifically what a person is doing now, let's just say adoptions, to be able to tell what kind of judgment they have. If he was in criminal court before, you can look at how he handled those cases. Was he fair and impartial? Was he biased towards the state? Was he biased towards criminals? Did he make good rulings in cases? How many of his cases were appealed and overturned? You can tell a lot about his judgment that way. And so I think that not revealing the name of the judge in an adoption kind of really doesn't make sense at all. These two, I'm so ready to see them tried, convicted, and locked away, and the keys thrown away. They should put them under the dungeon of the prison. Like, there is no place bad enough that we can send them. Okay, and then there are the federal law exceptions where certain information can be released, certain information can be given out, and DHS is using loopholes and technicalities to keep from releasing that information. So it's like they know they've done wrong. Okay, thank you for joining, Jordan, and thank you for subscribing. And it will definitely be available for you to see tomorrow. I'm just taking my time, so it might be a long broadcast. Good night. Sleep well. But as I was saying, it's like DHS is using loopholes and technicalities to avoid accountability. And the fact that the legislature has the ability to demand this information and they won't, she called it revenge. It's not revenge. It's accountability for an abused and murdered child. That's not revenge. That's justice and accountability. I mean, It's like these people don't think. Any given day, it could be you in that situation. It could be your kid taken from you because all it takes is a report. All it takes is a report, and you could lose your kids. No matter who you are, no matter how much money you got, it is possible that your kids could be taken based on some report that somebody made. And you could be the one whose kid is in foster care, whose kid is not being treated as well as you may think they should be treated. People fail to realize that it could be me any day. So, because there's a possibility that it could be me, it could be my family member, it could be my friend. If for no other reason, the fact that it could be any of those, you should want to fight for every child because it could be any child. And not necessarily even a child being in foster care. I mean, for some echelons of society, it's a custody battle, and the wrong parent gets the kid, and the kid ends up dead. Wouldn't you want accountability? Wouldn't you want the judge who placed your child with this unfit parent who ended up killing them? Wouldn't you want that judge held accountable for poor judgment? So why can't Ariel's judge be held accountable? Why can't her social workers be held accountable? It's not revenge. Okay. I just can't even believe she said that. My role is not revenge. With the biggest smile on her face. So we're going to go to the next article. If anybody wants to, let me see. Yeah. If anybody wants to come up, just click the link. It's pinned at the top. And you're welcome to come up, chit chat, talk about the cases, talk about a different case if you like. Because tonight we're just chilling, we're just hanging out. No hurry, no rush. I'm going to be here until I'm too sleepy to sit here anymore. So here is John Hill's second article. And it says, the state resorts to absurd excuses to stonewall an infamous child abuse case. The obvious conclusion is covering its bureaucratic ass. Yep, CYA. He writes, welcome back to the ongoing saga of how the state of Hawaii is doing everything in its power to avoid releasing any information about its actions in the most notorious child abuse case in recent Hawaii history. When we last left this very sad story, the state had refused to provide information about Ariel Seller's case despite a federal law calling for public disclosure when a child abuse case results in fatality or near fatality. The reason, even though 6-year-old Ariel had been missing from her Waimanalo home for almost 2 years at the time, her death was not official. A judge declared her dead in July, but the Department of Human Services still would not provide the information. It said it had not yet received the declaration from the court. So I took it upon myself to mount the many hurdles to obtaining a readily available public court document, and emailed it to them. Problem solved? Far from it. Now DHS has another excuse. Though the court had certified her death, it is still not officially declared Ariel's death was the result of abuse or neglect. Are you serious? Are they really sitting there picking hairs like that when they know that the child was abused and that's what caused her death? They know this. Let's take a second to review the circumstances of Ariel's death. Her adoptive parents, Isaac and Lehua Kalua, reported her missing more than 2 years ago. God, it's hard to believe it's been over 2 years since Ariel was reported missing. Like, it really doesn't even seem like it's been that long. It doesn't seem like I've been on YouTube that long. Wow. Setting off a massive search by authorities and residents of her Waimanalo neighborhood. One of her sisters then told police that the Kaluas kept the girl they had renamed Isabella in a dog cage in the bathroom, covering her mouth and nose with duct tape to keep her from roaming the house at night searching for food. The sister reported that she and Lehua found Ariel dead there. A lawsuit alleges that before her disappearance, several people had reported to the state that the Kaluas were abusing the 6-year-old girl. The Kaluas are now facing murder charges. And I believe, if I recall correctly, that one of those reports actually came from a teacher, a mandated reporter. So not only did you have the mother reporting, who they probably just dismissed out of hand because she had substance abuse issues, or they just automatically deemed anything she said unworthy of listening to because she had lost her child or her children. So not only did you have it coming from the mother, you had it coming from a mandated reporter, a teacher who has no dog in this race. She saw abuse and she reported it. So that's independent corroboration, which was also apparently ignored. Kaluas are now facing murder charges. To understand the absurdity of the state's position, let's delve into the legal fine points. To get grants from the federal government, states must create child welfare plans that address the confidentiality records and exceptions to that secrecy. The plan must include provisions that allow for, quote, public disclosure of the findings or information about the case of child abuse or neglect which has resulted in a child fatality or near fatality. I'm really glad that I'm reading this article because I did not know about that exception for child fatalities and near fatalities. The more you know, learn something new every day. Hawaii, meanwhile, has its own administrative rule put in place in 2004 addressing the same subject. It may have been the state's implementation of the federal requirement. It says that disclosure of child welfare records, quote, shall be authorized, unquote, when the subject of the report has been charged with committing a crime related to the child abuse or neglect report. It says that disclosure of child welfare records shall be authorized when the subject of the report has been charged with committing a crime relating to the child abuse or neglect report. So Isaac and Lehua are charged with crimes relating to the child abuse or neglect reports that DHS had been getting from several people, from several sources. So, what's holding up the disclosure? Another provision authorizes disclosure when, quote, the child named in the report is missing, has suffered a near fatality, been critically injured, or has died, unquote. So, above and beyond their argument that, oh, she's not officially declared dead, oh, there's no death certificate, oh, this, that, and the other thing, she's missing. Ariel is missing. And missing is one of the qualifiers. When the child named in the report is missing, so whether or not she's actually dead, whether or not she's actually critically injured, she's missing. So they really have no valid excuse for not giving out this information and findings. So what does DHS say? Daisy Hartsfield, Social Services Division Administrator, points not to the federal law or the state regulation, Instead, she cites DHS's policy manual, which specifies the information that should be released when the child abuse leads to a fatality or near fatality. Now, I'm going to pause right there because I've been watching I've been watching a whole lot of First Amendment audits, and this is what stands out to me a lot when I watch these audits. A lot of times, the police try to enforce police policy on citizens as if police policy is law, even when police policy contradicts the law. But the law supersedes department policy. That's one thing that I've learned from watching those First Amendment audits. Law supersedes department policy. You cannot enforce policy over law. So if the policy contradicts the law, the policy is null and void. This information would be of great interest to members of the public in assessing the state's actions in this case and the child welfare operation in general. It includes earlier investigations of abuse or neglect involving the child. It also would reveal what services the state provided and actions it took in the case. But Hartsfield says the state is not obligated to release it, except that the state is obligated to release it because law supersedes policy. Even though a court certified Ariel's death, she said in an email, there is no court finding or death certificate confirming that the death was the result of child abuse or neglect. Thus, until DHS receives a copy of the death certificate, DHS cannot ascertain whether information that can be shared under CAPTA, the federal law, is applicable. That sounded like a whole bunch of word soup to me. Even though the court certified Ariel's death, she said in an email, there is no court finding or death certificate confirming that the death was the result of child abuse or neglect. Thus, until DHS receives a copy of the death certificate, DHS cannot ascertain whether information that can be shared under CAPTA, the federal law, is applicable. You know how you ask a question and then a person answers you with a non-answer? That's exactly what that was. Where to begin? For one, why is DHS relying on its policy manual instead of the administrative rule, which carries more legal weight? Above that, why is DHS relying on its policy above and beyond the law? The rule authorizes public disclosure when the subject of an abuse report has been charged with a crime, as the Kaluas have. The Kaluas were the subject of abuse reports, and they have now been charged with crimes related to those abuse reports. So where's the disclosure? In the same vein, how can DHS ignore the provision calling for a release of information when the abuse has led to a child's death? I asked and got no answer. Of course you didn't. It's routine for DHS social workers to determine after minimal investigation that a parent has been, quote, confirmed as an abuser. It's based on the preponderance of evidence, the lowest possible standard requiring only that something is more likely to have happened than not. Does DHS seriously believe that it's more likely that Ariel died of something other than abuse? That despite the earlier accusations of abuse, she merely walked away from home and never came back? Or that she was kidnapped and killed by a stranger, despite the fact that no shred of evidence for this has ever been made public? that she died of natural causes, that her parents, for some reason, failed to tell anyone about. If the latter, what happened to her body? DHS says it's waiting for a death certificate that states Ariel's death was caused by abuse. The State Department of Health says that in the absence of a body, Ariel's next of kin could file a death certificate. This next of kin presumably would be the court-appointed representative of her estate, since her parents are accused of killing her. The cause of death could be listed based on the judge's findings of what happened. Okay, let's back up. DHS says it's waiting on a death certificate that states Ariel's death was caused by abuse. That is like a means of infinitely denying disclosure because we don't have a body. So no autopsy can be performed. Even if they found her body now, 2 years later, it is almost 100% positively likely that she would be skeletal. And so no signs of abuse would be there unless it was broken bones. But there wouldn't be bruises, cuts, scrapes, scars. There would only be whatever the bones could tell. And bones alone, I'm thinking unless it was something extremely obvious, like a caved in skull, then they wouldn't be able to say definitely she died from abuse. She died from someone else inflicting major injury on her. Because we know her leg was broken, but we also know she didn't die from that broken leg. If she had other bones broken, then how could they wouldn't be able to say, oh, she died from this broken arm or she died from this broken rib, because how many people die from a broken bone? Unless it's a major break like a fractured skull, a broken neck. So the DHS has basically found the one thing that they can hold on to and forever deny disclosure of findings and information. Now, it's saying that the cause of death could be listed based on a judge's findings of what happened. Hopefully, one of her family members will start this process. If you know their family members, I'm going to ask now that you ask them to please watch this live at about 50 minutes in so that they can get this information and follow through on it. Do their research and find out how to make this happen. How they can go about filing the death certificate, how they can go about getting a judge to make a finding based on whatever evidence they can present to him. Please get the information to the family that there is a process that they can initiate that will help to bring DHS to accountability, will help to force DHS into disclosure. Please tell them about 50 minutes in, or point them to this article. I'm going to link both of the articles in the description after the live. Okay. Perhaps the department is waiting for the Kaluas to be convicted in court or lose a civil suit. What in the world just happened? Okay. Ad blocker popped up. Perhaps the department is waiting for the Kaluas to be convicted in court or lose a civil suit in which they are defendants, then a court presumably would have confirmed the abuse. Leaving aside the fact that it could take years and the public has an interest in knowing now, the Kaluas could plead to a lesser charge. Perhaps DHS would then say there had been no determination that abuse occurred. In the civil, excuse me, in the civil case, the Kaluas could settle, again leaving DHS wiggle room to deny access to the records. So hopefully, and not for the sake of this whole disclosure thing, but just because I think Ariel needs justice. She needs every bit of full justice that she can get. So hopefully the state will not allow the Kaluas to plead out to a lesser charge. They will keep the charges as is and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Also, I hope that in the civil case, it's not settled. I hope that the family pursues it fully and doesn't accept a settlement simply so that DHS and whomever else can be forced into full disclosure, can be forced into giving some answers, put in the hot seat and forced to give account. Hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. The federal law is clearly designed to make the child welfare system accountable when things go wrong. And you would think that federal law would supersede even state law, especially in a case like this where you have a dead child. It's crazy. It's hard to conclude anything other than the obvious. DHS is simply covering its bureaucratic ass. Given the gravity of what happened and the public interest in knowing how, that's inexcusable. And he is 100% right. That is totally inexcusable. So if anybody wants to hop up to talk about Ariel, now's your chance. If you want to talk about the article, give your thoughts, your feelings, um, messages of support to the family, now is your opportunity. Because like I said, I'm just taking my time and I'm hanging out tonight, getting back in the swing of things, because I am definitely back for good. And I'll be back to streaming multiple times a week. And in a few weeks, I will be able to stream as much as I want to, as often as I want to, as long as I want to. I'm going to give you guys the good news. Actually, if you want to hear the good news, you can go over to my community wall and the last thing that I posted, check that out and read it. You don't have to do anything else, just read it. And you'll know what the good news is. And it is definitely good, great news. I am ecstatic. I am so happy I'm about to jump out of my skin. Do you hear me? All I can say is God is good all the time and always right on time. Yep. All right. I think I'm gonna do Cody last because Cody's already been covered a lot, and I'm gonna go with Cairo because um, if you guys remember, Cairo is the little boy who was found in the Las Vegas suitcase last year. Yeah, last year by the mushroom hunter who was foraging for mushrooms on his property or near his property, and he came across that suitcase. He was a sweet older man. Matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find Give me just a second here. Let me see. I think this is going to be it. I'm looking for the video where where they interviewed the man who found him. And I know I have it in my playlist somewhere, but I'm not sure if I could find it faster in my playlist than I could here. If I can't find it, then I'll post it on my community wall. I'll post a link on my community wall and in the description because I know I have it in my playlists somewhere. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. So, yeah, I'll just do it that way. Stop. All right, so I've got a few articles pulled up. There's only two that I'm going to read the full thing. And then there's like the other ones is just some excerpts out of it that I want to share with you because they kind of um, shed some light on the case and the details. You know how a lot of times you read these articles and one article will have some information that the other one doesn't, and then you read a third article and it has a little information that the other two did. So that's what I ran into when I was looking for updates for this case. So the first article that I want to read is going to be this one. Let me open this up a little bigger. Woman takes plea deal in the death of boy found in suitcase in southern Indiana. Would have to testify against boy's mother. And actually, I'm going to just play this. Let me know if you guys can hear this. If you can hear this when it starts playing, put a 1 in the chat. If you can't, put a 2.
This morning, the woman charged in the death of a boy whose body was found in a suitcase in southern Indiana is agreeing to plead guilty. That's according to online court records. Don Coleman was charged with aiding and inducing or causing murder, neglect, and obstruction. Right now, we're working to get a copy of the plea deal to see what charges Coleman is pleading guilty to. Prosecutors say Coleman helped 37-year-old Juwan Ludi Anderson dispose of the boy's body. Anderson's 5-year-old son was found in 2022.
Home Goods. Go gifting. Go finding.
Okay, so I thought that the video would have more information than it did. So what we're going to do is we're going to just dive into the article. The woman charged in the death of a boy whose body was found in a suitcase in southern Indiana is pleading guilty as part of a plea deal. Dawn Coleman, who is from Louisiana, she's from Shreveport, Louisiana, was charged with aiding, inducing, or causing murder, neglect of a dependent resulting in death, and obstruction of justice. Aiding, inducing, or causing murder, neglect of a dependent resulting in death, and obstruction of justice. And the reason I'm saying remember that charge is because if you if you recall the case, the autopsy found that the boy died from an electrolyte imbalance. He was well taken care of. He didn't have any signs of abuse on his body. Murder. If he died of an electrolyte imbalance, how is it conspiracy to commit murder? Because how can you conspire to cause and like intentionally cause an electrolyte imbalance? And so if there's a way to do that, y'all let me know and I'll take it back, but it doesn't add up to me right now. Okay. Prosecutors say Coleman helped 37-year-old Dejon Ludi Anderson of Atlanta dispose of the body of Anderson's 5-year-old son, Cairo Amar Jordan, in April 2022. 13 News received a copy of the plea that shows the defense and prosecution agreed to 25 years in prison. Thank you, Jesus. She didn't get a slap on the wrist, with 5 years of probation. So all total, that's a 30-year sentence because she's got to do 5 years on papers, reporting every month, taking urine tests and everything else when she gets out from these 25 years. As a part of the plea agreement, Coleman would have to testify against Anderson in any criminal case related to the death of Jordan. Anderson is his mother. Okay, and it says documents say Coleman told investigators, pay attention to this part. Coleman told investigators she walked into a bedroom of the trio's Louisville home and found Anderson on top of Cairo. The boy was face down on a mattress, and court documents claim Coleman told investigators it was already done. So Coleman, the winner plea deal, says that she was told by whatever happened had already happened. It was already done. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I don't know what happened. StreamYard crashed out, but I'm back. Can you hear me now, BC? Can you guys hear me at all? Okay, so apparently I have sound issues, so I'm gonna just end it for tonight on this note, and I'll come back tomorrow night